a whole thing I wanted to do, and now I can't remember what it is.
Well, welcome to 2026, I guess.
No. And this is a good topic for sort of New Year. I want to talk about New Year, actually, because I always feel like...
Should we introduce ourselves first, just like really early, get it out of the way?
We'll throw Eric off and everyone else, but sure. Welcome, everyone, to Faded Mates. I'm Sarah McLean. I read romance novels and I write them.
And I'm Jennifer Prokop, a romance reader and editor.
And it's January. And I think, here's my question. And I know what your answer is going to be because you're still a teacher. But New Year's always feels sort of like a fraud to me because it's really not. Like, I appreciate that we all do New Year's resolutions. Although I read this like really interesting thing that was like biologically, like the winter is actually a terrible time to do resolutions because like your body, like we're animals, like right? So we're designed to just like shut down, to like fatten up and like go under the covers.
You're doing a great job, everyone.
I mean, I'm good at that in July too, everyone. But and so like really we should be making resolutions in like, late spring.
Interesting.
And so, which is whatever. You do you, everyone. But truly like it's that whole new and crisp in the fall thing.
Yeah, I mean, listen, my entire life as a school teacher, I just feel like this is not anything. This is just the middle of the school year. And this is like a northern hemisphere thing, I think, because although I'm sort of curious, like I don't really know how school works anywhere else in the world. So, well, my friend Brittany, I don't know, you know this, the one who did all your TikToks, moved to Botswana with her family, and I literally like the other day she talked about her daughter.
Botswana to find it on the map.
It is directly north of South Africa. And so
it's the southern hemisphere.
Correct. And she mentioned being on, like, her daughter being on summer break. And I was like, Brittany, it is one thing to know that you live on a different continent now, but the fact that you flat up live in a different hemisphere,
the
somehow,
upside down.
My brain just like glitched. I was like, bzzz. I was like, wait, that's fucking crazy.
So, like, does they have multiple months off the way we do?
I don't know. I have not inquired.
It's complicated. We don't know. Somebody on the Discord is already drafting a post.
Yeah, please tell me how does school work where you live. I want to know
how this works, how school works.
Yeah.
We were in my daughter. I took my daughter to Australia and New Zealand over our summer in August, and it was not summer there, and all the kids were in school. So that felt, and she kept going, "Why are all these kids in school?" I was like, because it's not summer here.
Yeah, right.
Which is why she got the flu. So there it is. My public service announcement. If you are going to the other hemisphere, to the southern hemisphere in the months of May, June, July, August, September, get your flu shot.
Yeah.
Before you go.
And southern hemisphere people, if you are coming to see us, well, frankly, don't. Get all your shots somewhere else.
Why would you be doing that?
This measles thing is fucking crazy.
Listen, I can't. I mean, it's all going to come back, I'm like literally a heartbeat away from we're a heartbeat away from somebody getting polio. And I honestly can't
really process
it.
Yeah.
RFK Jr. should just walk into the sea. Imagine being his relative. Imagine being descended from the Kennedys.
Well, did you read that piece in the New Yorker?
Horrifying.
Yeah.
I mean, the piece in the New Yorker we're referring to is Caroline Kennedy, who is John F. Kennedy's daughter.
Yeah.
And John F. Kennedy Jr.'s sister. Her daughter has terminal cancer.
Yeah. And she wrote about it. Yeah.
She wrote about it. And
I'll link to it in show notes if you haven't read it, everybody. Yeah.
No,
it's like biblical tragedy. Yeah.
Cursed, right? In a lot of ways. But imagine being descended of liberal lions.
Yeah.
And your idiot cousin / brother /
getting, millions of people
uncle
killed across the world. Yeah.
The worst.
Yeah.
The worst.
It's funny because, and I'm sure, okay, if you're a lifelong reader, a really hardcore reader your entire life, I feel like a lot of things I learned, I can, or some things I've learned, maybe I can really remember the book that taught it to me. So this is a really, really old school thing. So when I was a kid, there was this series of books I really loved, which were old at the time, called The Great Brain. And they were set in Utah. So kids were Mormons maybe. And the Great Brain was the smartest kid in town. He was Encyclopedia Brown, but from the 30s, something, I don't remember. And this was, time before immunizations existed. And in one of the stories, like one of the kids in town got like mumps, and all the moms like took the kids over there. Essentially, it was like, the moms were like, we're going to get you sick now. Like kind of plan, essentially, like get you sick now so that you will be like immunized, essentially. But like, you don't have to live like that anymore. People died, from this kind of plan. Like, an immunization is not going to kill you. And I frankly cannot believe that we're like back here. So yeah, I saw a thing yesterday on social media. This again was like, it was like, possible measles exposure at Newark Airport between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. And I was like, do you know how many thousands of people were probably in Newark Airport 3 days after
New York
fucking
City area? We have 3 airports, and that's one of them.
3 days after Christmas? I was like,
especially 3 days after Christmas, and we'd had a snowstorm, Jen.
Right? And I just was like, oh my God. Anyway, sorry.
So, I mean, yeah, it's making me think. Did you read Everything is Tuberculosis?
I didn't, but I did read. God, did you read the book by, is it Eula Biss? There's a great book about inoculations and immunizations, and I think that was her name. And God, it was terrific. Let me look up the name of that.
I mean, Everything is Tuberculosis is written by John Green. And so it's very readable. Like, I think I gave it to my father-in-law actually this year for Christmas because I felt like, I usually give him a book that's a biography of stuff. Like, I've given him like Cod and Salt and like, he really likes like a very particular kind of nonfiction. But I gave him this because I have not read it, but I have heard John talk so much about it. And this idea that like disease, especially diseases that feel like ancient, right? Like measles or like TB or polio, like, leprosy, like things that feel like they should be eradicated. The reason why they're not is injustice. And I think that's the thing that's sort of so shattering about what's going on in the United States right now is like, this is injustice. This is targeted injustice.
Anybody, let me just mention this Eula Biss book is called On Immunity. It's from 2014. It was a great read. It was really terrific. If you've never read her essays or her work before, she's just a terrific writer. And she just, anyway, so yeah, I don't know. Get your immunizations now while you still can.
Yeah, get vaccinated, everybody. But I know that it's 2 weeks later, but I do want to talk about the holidays because I got a Kobo for Christmas.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And let me tell you what else I got for Christmas, which is a Kobo remote. And I will tell you that last night I crawled into my bed and I started reading the new Kristen Callahan. And I propped my Kobo up on my bedside table and I lay like a slug inside my blankets and I clicked my remote from inside my blankets and read my book, and I have never in my life felt more lazy. And I literally was like,
I'm an animal hibernating in my bed, in my
first
den.
Of all, this is what I'm supposed to do for winter. And I do have several things. I said to Eric, I was like, I have a list of problems. And he was like, well, good for you. You have a microphone to the book world.
You're like, tap, tap.
So here's what I want to say to publishing and to the people at Kobo about now that I've used my Kobo for like whatever, a week. And that is, one, NetGalley has got to get themselves, we've got to sort out this NetGalley Kobo problem, which is so everybody, NetGalley is if you are a reviewer of romance or any books.
Of any books, I guess. There's other ones.
Books? I don't know. I've heard of other books, I guess. This John Green book. If you are a reader of books and a reviewer of books, you can get an account at a thing called NetGalley, and publishers put up early copies of those books up there. And one of the sort of like revolutionary things that you have been able to do on NetGalley for a long time is send your early copy of your book to your Kindle.
Yeah.
So you can read it on your Kindle, which is amazing. And there is a function where you can send it to your Kobo. You can link up your Kobo, which I did, but not all publishers distribute to Kobo. So that's a publisher issue. But then I was talking to Dana, I think, on Threads, Dana from Grand Central on Grand Central?
Yes, from Forever. Yeah. We love you, Dana.
We love you, Dana. Dana from Forever on Threads. And she said the part of the problem is that, like, if a file is too big or, like, it has art inside, like, the Kobo doesn't, it's like Kobo rejects the file and says, like, you can't distribute it to us. So that's a Kobo problem at Kobo. Here I am, just airing my grievances here mid-January.
I mean, I guess.
And then, of course, there is this larger issue, which is a lot of the books that I want to read are on KU, which is an Amazon problem. Amazon, stop locking books down. Let them distribute widely.
Yeah, it's, I don't know what to tell you about any of that. You got to be careful, though, with the, okay, you know what? We can talk offline about the NetGalley disappearing book thing if you're downloading them not to your Kindle.
They disappear?
Bing.
What?
Yeah.
Like on the date?
Yeah, like they're essentially like
they
time.
Disappear.
They're sort of like time stamped.
What? I mean, I'm going to write a sternly worded letter to everyone. CC Publishing. CC.
Keep sending those
Kobo.
to your Kindle, my friend.
You know I got a Kobo. You didn't say that. Anyway, I do. What I will say is
I do say things like I have had a hard time transitioning.
I know, but Jen, you don't have to talk in code to me when we're not on the podcast. Listen, here's what I will say. It is a very light device. It is a very smooth working device. And so far, the clicker, I got the Clara, and the clicker's nice. And I'll be honest, you guys, anything I can do to diversify out of Amazon, that is my goal right now. I appreciate that, like, these Julia Wolf books that I'm mainlining, they are all in KU and I can't stop. But I've
had a hard time. I've tried several times and failed every time to leave the...
I know, because it is hard. It's hard. It's hard also to say, like, well, what was that on my Kindle or is that on my Kobo? Like, where does it live? Jen's making faces at me. I don't know. We're gonna have to talk. We're gonna have to talk.
No, I mean, it's just I don't know what to tell you. I had to like forgive myself for not being able to do it, even though I've tried several times. That's my current situation.
That's fine if you're out there and you're not able to. That's fine.
Now, here's what this actually
but I'm starting to get. Here's the other thing.
Yeah.
Listen, I will tell you straight up, everybody. I'm also real pissed off at Amazon right now as an author.
Yes.
For the way they are just like dumping AI tools into our books and for sure scraping the books. And listen, do I think Kobo is not? I mean, like, I know Kobo is surely using AI also, but like, it just feels like, I don't know. I don't know. There's no, it's 2026 and there's no solution except for what makes you feel like you're maybe doing a little bit of work toward,
freeing yourself from our tech
resisting
our tech overlords.
What's happening with AI, and that's happening obviously much more frequently with companies that have trillion-dollar revenue streams.
Right.
Then,
$1 trillion revenue, zero taxes. What a time.
This week's episode of Fated Mates is sponsored by Allison Bettis, author of Red Flag Warning.
So, everybody, this is a romantic suspense, the first in the Cupid meets crime scene novels. And in this one, we have meteorologist Iris O'Hara. She spends her days forecasting the weather, including red flag warnings, and now she's dating one. And that would be brooding park ranger Hector Madera. He is a military veteran and basically the human embodiment of everything that like women are supposed to watch out for, except that he's pretty hot. He's sexy. He's got a lot of flannel, permanent scowl. I mean, how could you resist this, right?
Like all park rangers.
I mean, obviously, people are messing with the parks, and he's just really upset about it. So Hector and Iris get involved in a murder investigation when she finds essentially a body of a missing woman. And so she has to go to Hector and ask for help. And then a wildfire tears through the national park where he's stationed, and they have to work together to essentially figure out what's going on. So the fire is spreading, secrets are igniting, and they have to decide which burns hotter, the wildfire outside or the one between them.
Oh, boy.
And I would like to just say, as is written on the back of this book, that nothing says romance like running from a killer in the middle of a wildfire. And honestly, that's true.
I feel good about that, honestly. Well, if you also want to learn about romance killers and wildfires, you can do that right now in print, ebook, or Kindle Unlimited. If your podcasting app supports it, you can click on the chapter title to be taken to buy Red Flag Warning. Thanks to Allison Bettis for sponsoring this week's episode.
Our topic today is something I suggested to Sarah because even though, as you could tell at the beginning, at the top of the episode, I'm not like a real big person to like set a bunch of like New Year's resolutions, I do have some like ways I approach a new reading year, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that, so I suggested to Sarah, like, let's like talk about a lot of that stuff. Like, right? Like, there's all these ways in which we, that people can like sort of think like, I don't know, like clear the decks for a new reading year. And even though it's 2 weeks into the year, it's still going to work. And so, like one of those things for Sarah is like, really trying to like switch to a new platform or, as much as possible. Or, like what are the, like sort of things that we do as we approach a new year. And, the idea is kind of like it's going to be a little bantery, but I think, thinking about if you're a big reader, it's like, like the books, the TBR, all of the, how are you keeping track of everything? What are you doing? What do you do or not do? And I thought that would maybe be like a fun topic.
I think it's interesting that you put it that way because for me, as much as I think of September, right, fall, as being the beginning, because of school, it just sort of is embedded in my brain. Reading, like publishing, really is like a calendar year structure.
Yes.
And so, and I think that in a lot of ways it is that way because, so I don't know how much I have talked about this on the podcast, but my career prior to writing romance was in publishing. And I was a publicist for many, many years. And I started out as a literary publicist. And when I started out as a literary publicist, it was long enough ago that there really was a sort of sense of the publishing calendar.
Yes.
And the idea, and that's not to say that there isn't still, but it was sort of like quiet, like certain types of books were published in the winter, certain types of books were published in the summer, certain types of books were published in the fall. And it was like, when I first started, like in literary fiction, or literary, even sort of big nonfiction, the biggest books of the year in like nonfiction were published in the fall. And like the fall would have this like big, beautiful like batch of, political memoirs or biographies or, biographies of stuff. They would all come out like all together in the fall. And so, you steered clear of the fall if you had like a fun like beach read, like it just wasn't right for you. Beach reads were for the summer. And when I started writing romance and I started publishing romance at Avon, which is an imprint of HarperCollins, there was HarperCollins, their fiscal year turns over mid-year, right? So like in July. And so the structure was that their biggest books of the year were published May, June, July, August, because the last two, those May, June books were, this is in romance, because romance is beach read, right? Romance is a summer read, unless it's a holiday romance, and that's a different thing. But like, so they would publish, Stephanie Lawrence, Julia Quinn, Eloisa James, me, Tessa Dare, kind of like all
right,
like in that sort of May, June, July, August world. And the idea was like May and June were good months for those sort of huge books, huge summer books, because they would close out the fiscal year with a bang.
Oh, interesting.
And then July and August were also good years because they would open the fiscal year with a bang, right? So like the publishers themselves had a sense of like what they had to hit for the last 2 months of the year and how successful they had been for that sort of. And remember, and then it would go sort of July, August, September, October would sort of across a whole traditional publishing house would look really great by the end of the year, right? Because then you get that boost at the holidays when people are buying gifts.
Books, yeah.
So it really did feel like, the quieter books would come out in sort of January, February, March, and then you'd sort of ramp up, and then you'd have all that big fiction in the summer, and then all that big nonfiction in the fall. And then the holidays would come and people would buy all the books that were big and on the table, right? Because if you think about holiday publishing, it often was, the things that were on the table. And again, this is years ago, pre-pandemic, really. The things that end up on the table at the holidays are just the big books of the year.
Yeah, of course.
Right, like Atmosphere, Taylor Jenkins Reid's Atmosphere was on the front table at Barnes & Noble on the holidays because that's the book everybody was buying for their mom or their wife or their sister or whatever. So all of that is to say that then the pandemic came and now, my agent now is sort of famous for saying like there is no publishing calendar, like just put the book out unless it has summer in the title and then you're kind of stuck unless there's like Christmas in the title and then you're sort of stuck.
In a different way, yeah.
But I do sort of think in my head, but then, you think about like end of the year episodes, like what were the best books of the year, so for me, as much as I'm like life turns over in September, for me, reading does turn over now.
Yeah, I think so. I think so for me too. And I think it's like hard not to feel that way because of, so I think there's a lot of like external structures now, right? Like, so lots of, like if you're on Goodreads, and I would assume Storygraph, it does something similar. It's like setting your yearly reading goals or your intentions for that. There's a lot of, things like that. The big end of the year, like best of lists have already dropped. And so there's a sense that like everyone is like kind of resetting that clock. And I also just think like it is somehow easier for me to like think about like, okay, this is a new year. It's time to like clean up my reading life. Right. Mm-hmm. And I think, like in terms of like looking at what books came out or are coming out, and sort of planning for those and thinking ahead about like what I want to be reading or what books I'm really looking forward to, so a lot of that kind of stuff does tend to happen. I also think for me, it has to do with, listen, reading is the most I love it the most, right? My entire life is based around this thing I love doing, right? It's my job at work. It's my podcast. It's my editing life. It's like my hobby. It's my free time. Like this is it, everybody. I'm really committed to reading. And the thing about that is after Christmas is over and before I go back to school, it's also a time where I get to really like sort of like look around and think, okay, well, what is it that I am, like moving out of the house? I'm often cleaning out things. I'm giving books away, like whatever. So it just like is a really good time for me to also sort of thinking about it. And so I figured it would be like maybe a fun episode to have us like talk about, again, like I said, like how we sort of approach some of those tasks or the ways we like reset and think about, kind of like what's coming.
What's the best way for us to tackle this? Because I think I've started a new system this year.
I love a system. Let's talk about systems.
So here's what I do. So I am a paper planner person, although I am not. There are some people who are like planner people and they use stickers and color coordinating and they like post them to Instagram.
You're not that kind of paper planner person.
Nobody who's ever listened to this podcast is like, Sarah's definitely that organized, because she's not. So, but what I would say is I am a paper planner person. And one of the things that I struggled with last year, and I talked about this a little bit on, some of the late in the year episodes, was, that I really struggled to read last year. Like I struggled finding books that I found compelling. I struggled to remember a lot of the things that I was reading. Like I think my brain was just like in a really complex place last year, like a lot of us, right?
Yeah.
I think for many, many reasons. And so one of the big challenges that I had, especially with the podcast, because you and I spend a lot of time going like, oh, we should do an episode on whatever the thing is. Right. And so, and then I would be like, I know I said that, and I know I said it because of something I had read.
Right.
But I actually don't have any memory of what that book was that like inspired me to say to you like, Jen, we should do Men in Fur. Right. And so for me, what I started doing is, so I have a planner, and it has like it's not a complex planner. It just has like a few lines for every day. And what I've started doing is marking the books that I finish on the day I finish them in the planner. And then, so I just sort of like put the title and the author in. I know I finished that book. And then I put in like a couple of like little notes, like, like kind of rating. And then, this is a marriage and trouble book, or this is, like something, or like if the hero has a scar, or like, just because I think for me, there is no good system. Like I know a lot of people use Goodreads. I don't use Goodreads because why would I ever torture myself in that way? Like if I end up on a rating website.
I do think if you're an author, those sites have to feel like,
I mean, they're just too too tempting to put in your own book and then go into a death spiral for a week.
Of course.
So like I need a system. And then last year I bought a reading journal, but like that felt too much.
Yeah.
This feels like I've got a journal in front of me. I've got a diary in front of me every day. Like I have a planner. It has a structure to it already. Mm-hmm. And this is like kind of an easy way for me to keep track. And I'm not ever going to put them into a Google spreadsheet. Like, that's just never going to be it. But, like, if you said to me, I want to do Marriage and Trouble.
Yeah.
Now I could, like, flip back and say, like, oh, okay, I read that. Okay, read that.
Yeah.
Also, I did this because I keep a list of books that I really love on my personal website. Mm-hmm. And the podcast, I have gotten really lazy, like, about updating that list because now we do this.
Yeah, right.
Right? So this way I also, that it gives me, it's sort of, if I put in a book that I really, really loved, now I'll update the website too.
I do not keep track of what I read. I've tried, there have been years, I actually have tried like on a spreadsheet, and it's too bad because in some ways I do really like when I look back at like those years where I kept them. For me, like, I don't really use Goodreads. I think it's tricky. I occasionally will like go in and look at Goodreads and kind of like say that I've read something. I just don't have, I think my problem is that I want my notes to be like private. And I know that you can like make that all the case on Goodreads if you want to, but I just don't want to have to go somewhere else to do it. Right. And then what I discovered is, I'm often reading on the go. You were talking about your Kobo earlier, but like the biggest sort of like efficient change for me is that I read at home on an iPad, and that iPad has like every reading app on it. Right. So it's like, and I know that you can't do that because of the lighting thing. Right. But like, so it has a Kindle app and the Kobo app and Apple Books and like a PDF reader. I use like Blue Sky Reader and Libby. You know what I mean? And so I'm kind of like, and my phone is the same way. And so I'm often just like reading on the go, and I'm just not very good at then like sort of remembering, oh, I finished that book, but I was somewhere else or whatever. So I've really stopped. I've stopped tracking what I've read. I feel like the podcast is me tracking what I've read to some extent, right? It's like kind of, and I am not one for redundant systems. I think that's it. Like once we started the podcast, I was kind of like, meh, burr, burr. I wish I did though, because sometimes what I like about like those old spreadsheets is I would just leave myself like a 1-sentence note right? About what I thought of the book or whatever. And sometimes they're really funny. You know what I mean? Just like whatever dumb thing was in my brain. And I do sort of miss that. Like, I feel like that's what's kind of missing is like, it's a note from me to me saying like, here's what you thought of this. And somebody was like, you could put the Google app on your phone or, you know, like the Google Sheet or whatever, and then just be updating it on your phone. And I was like, theoretically, I could. Yes, you're right. But I clearly am not going to do that.
It just feels so antithetical to the process.
Yeah, I think, I'm not reading. I mean, listen, I know a lot of people really like that, but like, am not, I feel like, let me put it this way. I think when some people, and maybe this is because I work with kids. I don't mean adults. Maybe I mean kids. I think a lot of kids and parents view like keeping track of reading as sort of a, I don't know, like you're competing against yourself and you got to get your pages in and you got to read the books. And reading's never been like that for me. So
yeah, agreed.
There's nothing in like me as a reader that kind of needs that, I guess, except that sometimes later I'm like, did I read this? I don't fucking know.
I mean, I think it's interesting because it's that time of year whenever it's like Spotify Wrapped and Discord Wrapped and whatever Wrapped. And, and people are doing that sort of Goodreads like, oh, I read 5 million books.
Right.
And you're like, good for you.
Yeah.
And I think I would be interested in and somebody's going to be like, this happens, but I don't know where. I think I would, be vaguely interested in like, here's a list of the books you read this year. Like a sort of, whatever. But it's interesting because I opened my Kindle just now as you were talking to see the app, to see like what it, whether it had that. And it says you've read 19 books. And I'm like, that's
categorically
false.
Untrue.
Like, I mean, I've read 19 books for one episode of this podcast. So
right.
I don't know what that means. I mean, it must not be counting KU books, maybe. I don't know. Or maybe you have to get to the very, very last page of the file. And often I
you're like
about the author.
Right.
I don't care about authors.
Yeah, I often am really, really frustrated that the e-reading apps we use do not have like a pop-up window you can click at the end that says like, I finished it this date. You know what I mean? Like, I'm always like, why? And then like leave yourself a note about what it was.
And it wants
you
to like star review and then like write a review. Come on now.
Like I want to know what I thought. I don't want anyone else to know.
Feed your algorithm.
Right. I think
when I finish a book.
Don't boss me around. Scorpio, big Scorpio energy.
You're not the boss of me.
You're not the boss of me. Kindle app. This week's episode of Fated Mates is brought to you by Caroline Linden, author of How to Get Away with Scandal.
So sometimes a writer writes a book and you are just entranced by secondary characters. And that happened in Caroline's book, Love and Other Scandals. And now all the readers who were desperate for Aunt Evangeline's book are getting it. Evangeline is a scandal. She has had 2 unhappy marriages. She is now like fully living out her life with a tarnished reputation. And she has vowed to never get entangled with another man. She's not even interested in looking at them.
Smart. We support you, Evangeline.
The problem with making that decision, Jen, is that at some point a dashing explorer is going to pass through town and you're not going to be able to stop yourself from looking at him. Nor are you going to be able to stop yourself from taking this handsome man home for one night, just one night, and then you won't look at men again. Except Richard Campion is deeply entranced by Evangeline in this one night. He's happy to go home with her and very sad when he wakes up in her home and she is gone. She has pieced out on him in her own house.
A+.
So he heads off to his travels kind of obsessed, like never really having had enough of this one woman who haunts him through all these years. And when he gets home after all these years, he is just as fascinated and very excited to discover that Evangeline would like to repeat the events of that one night before. She's definitely interested in looking at Richard again. And this time he intends to persuade her to look at him for the rest of his life.
Sounds amazing. So if you'd like to check out How to Get Away with Scandal, it is available now in print, ebook, and audio. And if your podcasting app supports it, you can click on the chapter title right now to be taken to buy the book. Thanks to Carolyn Linden for sponsoring this week's episode. One of the problems, and Sarah has this problem too, and I have this problem, and you all listening at home have this problem, which is too many books, not enough time, right? And there's more coming every day, like just a flood of books into my mailbox from publishers, right? I buy them like a fucking idiot. There's all the books, you know what I mean? And so one of the things that I did want to talk about is like, well, it is, you know, when you have thousands of books on your apps, and I have thousands of books on my apps, everybody, and thousands of unread books, how do I like keep track of them? Because the truth is I am often downloading books that I know I'm not going to read right away or whatever. Now I want to talk a little bit about like sort of organizing like a digital library, because I think that might be kind of fun. And then also like you have to figure out, now some of you might actually have way more, I don't know. You know, you're like, I only have digital books. I only buy another one when I've read the previous one, and I don't have this problem. And to you, I say,
remarkable work, everyone.
Good job.
I mean, I don't know how you,
I can't imagine anyone on this podcast feels that way, because I know how you all are. You're like us, right? I really try to utilize like, and it has different names depending on which reading app you use, right? Like so on Kindle, it's like collections and, you know, or whatever. I do try at the beginning of the year to set up like new folders.
Oh,
okay.
Interesting.
And one I call like 2020, and I call them all the year first, okay? Because there's all the previous years. So 2026. And it'll say like ARCs, which are like advanced reading copies, galleys, right? Like preview books. Then I will say like 2026, like just like fiction, 2026 nonfiction. And what I'm doing is as I am buying new books, I am trying to put them into these folders so that when I'm looking for something to read, right, I don't forget that I have bought something, right? Like I don't forget that. And because the other thing is I mostly do read in e now. You know, I have lots of paper books around and I still buy them, but like for the most part, I do read in e because of I'm traveling around and it's everywhere with me, right? There's nothing worse than being like, now I'm stuck somewhere in a line for 20 minutes, but my book's at home. So I don't really feel that way if all my books are in e. And so this is one thing that really helps me to like kind of move with intention into the new year. And to be like, okay, here are the books that I downloaded thinking I would be interested in them. And, you know, that's not to say that if I, you know, of course you can read backlist, but like if I downloaded an ARC in 2022 and I didn't get around to reading it, it's not a priority for me right now, probably, right? Until maybe what I'll do is I'll be like, okay, we're doing Marriage and Trouble. And then I will look at a Marriage and Trouble list and I'll be like, I might have this book on my Kindle, and then I'll like kind of dig it out. So I think one of the things that really helps me is to really think like, okay, it's a new year, new books. I'm going to organize into these folders. And then when I have that, like last night, I was like, what am I going to read? What am I reading? I can open one of those and be like, oh, yeah, I downloaded blah, blah, blah book 3 weeks ago and didn't get to it, but I'm still really interested in reading it. And it's a 2026 ARC, and here it is. So yeah. I do think that like that's one thing that I really find useful is, you know, in the thousands of books on my Kindle, how can I find the ones that are like the most recent? And you would think that you could just, you know, if you open your Kindle, it's showing kind of what's recent, but like that gets real messy for me because when I'm like then recording an episode where I'm like, okay, now we're going to do time travel and I'm pulling all those books up, it's pushing everything else down, right? So,
and you're a rereader too.
And I'm a rereader. And so often something is at the top of the list that is, you know, I'm like, oh, I just reread that scene because I wanted to suffer.
Yeah.
So perfect. I would say, like, if you have never experimented with, like, making folders or collections in your e-readers, I do think that it can be a really, like, try it. You know what I mean? I have found that this is a really efficient way of working. And I also think, like, okay, so there are episodes we do every year. Every year we do a holiday episode. Last week, I read a really fun Christmas book I'd never read before. So I'm going to make a 2026 Christmas romance, and I'm going to put it in there. And then when it comes time to prep for that episode, I will remember, oh, I read this last year, but after we recorded the 2025 one. So I do some, I mean, nobody at home cares about that because, you know, you're not doing that. But I do find that kind of stuff can be really helpful for, like, then I'm like, what's new in my Kindle?
Yeah.
Right? It's in these folders.
I also think that because the podcast listeners are often interested in how the podcast itself works, I think, so we've probably talked about this before, but it's worth us sort of saying that every kind of month or so we have, Jen and I have a conversation where we sort of go like, all right, what are we doing?
Yeah.
Like,
right.
What are the tropes that we want to tackle over the next month or so, over the, a month in the future. So right now, for example, it's January 17th. We're recording this end of December. We know what our episodes are through the first week of February.
Yeah.
And then there's one or two that we sort of have question marks around, like maybe that will work, maybe it won't. And then we will, so sometime probably right around this week when you're listening, we'll have a conversation where we'll talk about February and into March. And so when we know, for example, that Jen talked about time travel. We talked about this last week that we have a time travel episode, like kind of cooking. Often what we do is we know, like, we want to do a time travel episode, but instead of setting the date for it right away, we sort of say, like, we want to do a time travel episode. Jen brought this up a couple of months ago to me. Right. So we've both been sort of quietly setting aside books that are like, oh, this is time travel. We're gonna read this book. So then we might know an author is coming out with a time travel book that we'll want to talk to them about if it's a close friend, right? Like if it's, or a friend of the pod, or we might say like, oh, there's this great debut, that I really loved, or there's this great book that I've already read that doesn't come out until July, and I loved it so much. For example, I already have one of my best of the year books on the list. Yeah. Now for next year, that book comes out in the summer of next year, so it's like, well, I know I'm going to want to talk about something related to that book. Right. So sometimes we read a book, we really love it, and we think like, well, what if we did?
Right. What if we did this?
As a theme?
Yeah.
Right. So for me, that does exist. That list does exist for me, and that list exists in my notes app. Mm-hmm. And it's basically like, here, sex lessons, for example. I really want to do an episode about sex lessons. I've wanted to do an episode about sex lessons for many, many years.
Right.
Just trying to figure out like what the right angle is on that. And then, so I'm sort of keeping that list. And then you all know sometimes there's like a theme that I start to see. Like, for example, I was like, I'm really interested in the fact that there's a lot of dead people in romances these days last year. And I mean, I recognized that 2 years ago in 2024.
Right. It took us a while to get there.
Or whatever. And I think that was our October 24 episode. And so it took us some time to sort of figure it out. And so that's sometimes what we do too. We sort of start recognizing themes and then keeping those lists. That is all in like one big notes app file for me. And I literally will drop, if I see a book even go past me on Threads or on Instagram that even looks a little bit like it is relevant, I'll drop that in there. And then when we finally pull the trigger on that episode, that's when all those books get purchased for me.
Yeah. It was really interesting because like at some point someone in the Discord was like, wait, you guys are doing all that? There's not like someone running this down for you? And I was like, yeah.
Can you imagine? That would be amazing.
I was like, no, this is our brains, everybody. And I think like that is the part. I mean, I guess it is kind of, good for you to know like everything that is like generated into the podcast is really coming from just like the fact that we are long long-time romance readers and also like current day hardcore romance readers, right?
Yeah.
So everything is like sort of just being like generated. And, you know, it's interesting because like there are episodes, I'll be honest, that like people have suggested, you know, that I'm like, it's like even
Give
just
us an example.
like hockey. A lot of people have been like, will you ever do
you all
like a
want
hockey
hockey.
romance episode? And I'm like, no, you don't need that from me. And I feel like I have this is, again.
Surely there's a hockey romance podcast. I'm going to Google that right now, everybody. You keep going.
Okay, like, and here's why. It's not that I wouldn't talk about hockey books, but I personally don't read enough of them to like have anything interesting really to say. And it's like kind of also the inverse, which is everybody reads so much of them that it's not something you need us to like pull together for you, right? And I feel this way in my day job with kids. Like if there's a book, I remember when The Hunger Games came out and I read it and I loved it. I will confess to never having read any of the books after. And a lot of times people are really surprised by that. They're like, well, why not? And I was like, because kids do not need me to rec them The Hunger Games. The Hunger Games is big enough without me, if that makes sense, right? Like if you're going to be reading to recommend things, right? Like reader's advisory is what librarians call this. Then you don't need to do the stuff that is already so freaking big, right? Like, so if right now you're a librarian out there, you don't need to actually read Heated Rivalry to know what you need to know about it, right? You can be like, people love it. It's a gay hockey romance. There's just a big show about it. You know that. You know enough already to recommend it to someone. And I think that's the part about like sometimes the episodes people want. I'm kind of like, nobody needs me to do hockey romance on this podcast. It is already big enough, right? And that doesn't mean that we don't do things that are, you know, really big, but like, I feel kind of the same way. I mean, like, time for me to confess. I've never read a book by Emily Henry. And I'm sure they're nice books, but like everybody already reads Emily Henry. Like, you know what I mean? And so it feels to me a little like I don't need to read something for the podcast that is already so well known. Now, if I was like, I want to read it for me, of course I would. I read plenty of really popular books, but I just mean in the sense of like that. Like we'll never do an Emily Henry read along. Like, does that make sense to people?
It's just not, it's not worth it. Because the goal of Fated Mates was always, I mean, I have read a lot of Emily Henry books. So,
sure.
I mean, and I think that's an interesting point too, right? Like, remember, Jen and I come at romance with different, like, romance is my job.
Right.
Like, and so,
yes,
you know,
it's
even
different.
if I didn't enjoy Emily's books, which I do, I would have read Beach Read and People We Meet on Vacation
because they were
it's my
juggernauts.
It's
my
my
job,
work,
right? Exactly.
Right. Like if you're out there and you write romance novels and you're like, I've never read Emily Henry, like
you should,
why?
Right?
Like there's no reason why you shouldn't. In fact, it's your work. Like if you were an accountant and like the tax code changed, you would read all the articles about the tax code, right?
Yeah.
And like, I'm sorry, but that is the work, right? Yeah. And so, for example, I mean, like we talked about this, I think, extensively when we did the 50 Shades of Grey episode, because like that was really a remarkable moment for me as a writer who really has always thought of my work as work.
Yeah.
Like capital W work, capital J job.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
Like so many writers, many romance writers in 2011 or whatever it was, were like, I would never read that. That's just, I haven't read it. I don't care. And it's like, you haven't read the biggest fucking juggernaut thing ever?
Like in our genre, right?
Why not?
Even if it's to be like, why? What is it that is speaking to people? It's genre fiction, right?
This is the job.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I felt that way when Colleen Hoover became, like, you know, but again, I'm probably naming, like, if I named all the books that I have read that Jen has not read, we would sit here for a long time. And largely, it's because Jen's able to say, like, that's not for Jen. Like, I know straight up from the jump that it's not for Jen. And she doesn't have to. So But I would say, like, for example, if you're a writer out there and you haven't read Heated Rivalry,
Yeah.
might be a good time.
No,
because
right.
the show is a, beat for beat
Yeah.
recounting of the book.
Right.
And it feels like, this is just shaking the ground of romance right now. Like, you got to read that.
Yeah.
And so I think there's that too, right? Like, I think when we came to the podcast, obviously it's not like nobody had ever heard of Cressley Cole.
Right.
Like, but we also just happened to love it. But also, like, it's interesting, right? Because we haven't done any of Cressley's books since the sort of first 19.
Yeah.
And she's released 3, I think, since the podcast has been going. And should we have? Probably, because, like, that is where we started. And a lot of and obviously, like, the first season of the podcast was Cressley Cole fans coming to the podcast. But, like, at this point, it feels like, well, if you listen to Fated Mates, you've heard of Cressley.
Yeah, right.
Like, if you were with us from the beginning and care enough for, like, the launch of the next IAD book, which we, of course, all do, like, you're reading it. We don't need to do that with you. And when we sort of moved away from that first season of the podcast into, like, the books that blooded us and then the Trailblazer series, like, we started sort of thinking about what we wanted the podcast to be.
Yeah.
It just never occurred to us, I think, to be the podcast that's reading the most popular stuff. What we wanted to do was read the best stuff and, like, share it with
and
our listeners.
Plenty of popular stuff is great. Like, I'm not saying Emily doesn't write a great book or whatever, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I don't mean to, like, that's the Venn diagram of that is overlapping. Like, there obviously.
This week's episode of Fated Mates is brought to you by Avon Books, publishers of Like and Love with You by Emma Albin.
So Emma's books are widely known as regencies that have a real, like, modern twist to them. And this one is billed as Mean Girls meets Northanger Abbey and begs the question, what if Katie and Regina George just kissed instead? So Catherine Pine relocates to Bath in 1817 and comes face to face, surprisingly, with her mother's arch nemesis and her mother's arch nemesis's daughter, the wildly popular, kind of mean girl Lady Rosalie. It's been 25 years and there was a horrible betrayal, and now Catherine's mom sees the perfect opportunity for revenge. What if Catherine jumps in and wins the favor of Lady Rosalie's suitor and unofficial betrothed, the most eligible, Mr. Dean? Except Catherine soon discovers that Lady Rosalie is by far the wittiest, cleverest, most intriguing, most beautiful young woman she's ever met, and she's smitten with Rosalie, not with Mr. Dean, except she has a responsibility to her mother and to her mother's revenge plot. For her matter, Rosalie feels trapped in her relationship. She doesn't want to be Bath's resident mean girl anymore. And this newcomer, Catherine, is gunning for her spot as Queen Bee, but also gunning for a spot in Rosalie's heart. And how is this ever going to work itself out?
So, if you would like to find out, you can check out this Rivals to Lovers, Opposite Attract, extra spicy historical romance. It is available in print, ebook, and audio. And if your podcasting app supports it, you can click on the chapter title right now to be taken to buy the book. Thanks to Avon Books and Emma Albin for sponsoring this week's episode. Often, like, the popular stuff I'll read is maybe, like, out of the genre. I mean, so for example, I just read The God of the Woods by Liz Moore, which was, like, one of those books I felt like was everywhere this year. And I tore through it in a day and a half. And it was terrific. And it was really fun to read something, like, really. And I think that's the other part about, you know, like, having, like, my little folders or whatever is, it is so easy to just sort of feel, like, kind of burned out sometimes, right? Like, you know, I'm stuck. I haven't read anything good in a while. And often, like, what I need to do to, like, reset is to read something that's not romance. And so having, like, a folder where I'm like, these are books I have downloaded recently that are like literary fictions or mysteries or thrillers or whatever, and like to give those a shot and be like, okay, I'm going to read one of these. I'm just going to like take a chance. And here they all are right here. I don't have to go like searching in my Kindle to be like, when's the last time I saw, whatever. So I think like that part about like thinking about what has caught my eye recently, I really pretty religiously read, like the New York Times best 100 book, not like read the books, but I will read the description right at the end of the year. The New York Times does like 100 notable books of the year. The Summer Storms was one of them. Then they narrow it down to like a top 10. Kirkus puts out a lot of like top, best of the year lists. I really love reading people's best of the year lists, because even if I'm not going to necessarily read them, I kind of like they're in my brain. And then like if I see one on sale or it's on BookBub or somebody mentions it somewhere else, I see it at the library, then I might be like, oh, that one did sound kind of interesting to me. And so I think that that's another thing. It's like, I'm always kind of like, what else is out there that I might really like? And what's coming, and what did people love last year? And that, for whatever reason, feels like it's at this time of year. It's in the dead of winter when all I want to do is hibernate and read, that I find myself, it's like a good time for me to be like just really thinking about all that,
Yes, agreed. I also, when I sort of so there are a couple of other things that I do specific to the podcast.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And this is, we've talked about this before. In order, I think, to be both a good citizen of romance and also a good podcast, it's our work we have to read intentionally, right? And that doesn't just mean like we're doing an episode on, Olympics, like we have to go look for all the Olympics romances. It's a lot of things. In many ways, it's like, okay, we're doing an episode on the Olympics. Like, yes, we have to go look at Olympics romances, but we have to think about like diversity, breadth, depth, like how many, like the types of romances that we're talking about, the types of sports we're talking, right? If we said we were going to do an Olympics romance and it was all ice skating romances, like we've missed the mark. Right. So there's like that level of intentionality. But I think then for me, there are two other levels. One is we are now like 2 years into being very committed to debuts.
Yeah.
And this is, I think, because, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm going to put words in your mouth too, but I think you and I both feel like without debut romances, like the genre will fail.
Right.
Like we need fresh meat.
Right.
Right. So last year, we talked about this on our debut episode last year, that like I feel like I was not as intentional around debuts as I could have been throughout the year.
Yeah.
So when we did our winter reads episode this year, I was really focused on like if something came up as a debut, I immediately downloaded it.
Yeah.
And then I made a note of it.
Yeah.
Like in my app.
I do have a 26 debuts folder.
Yeah,
as well,
we have a spreadsheet already, I noticed.
Yeah.
But like, and I haven't filled out the spreadsheet yet, but I do have everything in my app. And like, so that's giving me a lot of joy because I feel like I'm already kind of like on top of it in a way that I was not last year. And I was really like disappointed in myself for not being on top of it. But and I would say to the authors out there who feel, debut authors especially, often feel like they're just shouting into the void. Like I have like Grace Riley, I follow her on Threads. She follows me on Threads, and I see her talking about her book, Yes, Chef, a lot on Threads. It's a debut, and like Grace, if you're listening, like I see you hustling. Like I already have it on my list to read. And so I think there's that too. Like I'm keenly aware, I think, like so many people, of like just how difficult it is to get seen and heard in the noise. Yeah. And so just know, if you're out there and you're a debut, first of all, tell people you're like, when you're talking about your book, say like it's your debut romance. I think a lot of people are really eager try new people. So there's that. And then the other thing that I myself am very intentional about, or have been for the last year and will be this year, is I'm trying really hard to add in like a book or two a month of historicals that are by people who I've never read before.
Yeah.
And that was because last year we did a historical episode, people we had never talked about on the podcast before. And I had a great time.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think I probably read like 30 books for that podcast. And it was really fun for me. A nice reminder in the noise of like, historical is dead. Measure out its grave. That like, it's not, people are still writing it. And
I think the other thing about like setting an intention, like for a reading year, whatever, in whatever way that is for you. Like, so for some people, it's about like a number of books. And for some people, it's about like, a type of book or a subgenre you don't read as much, or, like sort of committing to a certain number of new to you authors or whatever. Or, for a lot of people, and this is also very valid, capital V valid, is going back into your Kindle and finding, 20 or however 25 books that you haven't read, right? Like essentially reading your own TBR, read the books that you committed to at some point and said, I was interested enough in this book at some point that I downloaded it or bought it and I never read it. And I think like that can also be really and so I think like that's the thing. It's like there's so many ways to approach that. And I think there's something about it being a new year where you can really say, right? So, and like I said, for me, like sort of organizing that is really helpful. So like, for example, if you're interested in like, I'm going to read my own TBR, right? Kind of like those are really fun. The years I have done like a kind of TBR challenge have been really fun. And like going back through and just, again, like it's you spend an hour, you go to your, master list of books or whatever, your content and devices on your Kindle or, whatever, wherever it is. And you just kind of like go through and you're like, what have I not read? Right. And then you're like, let me put this in a separate folder and say, these are books I still want to read. And that I find like these types of, I don't know, like the meta reading kind of activity as being really, I don't know, I just find it very grounding, right? Yeah. Like it's, and I don't know like what other word to use for it. Like this is me saying like reading is an important part of me and who I am, how I process the world and the things around me. It's so easy to get caught up in like what's new, or I'm like hurrying up to read something for the podcast, but to really instead say like, no, like with intentionality, these are the books I really want to spend time reading, right?
Yeah.
Or these are books,
I think,
that have languished on my Kindle and I'm going to pull them back out,
Yep. And then I want to talk about also there's something happening this year that I've sort of prepared for. And again, it's sort of it's easier for me because of my life and just sort of knowing the people that I know and being as plugged into the universe as I am. But there are a number of new books coming out by people who I love and who I think are talented. And so those obviously become like the kind of tent poles over the course of the year. Like I know that these books are going to be books that I read. Like, so Lenora Bell, who is a historical romance novelist who I adore in person and in print, has a new name, Lenore Nash, and she's writing noir mysteries. Her first book, She Fell Away, is set against the State Department, which is really, and it's very cool. It's sort of, the heroine is a State Department employee whose job it is. Like, I didn't know that this was a real job, but of course it is. Like, if you're in a foreign country and something happens to you, like bad, like let's say you get murdered in a foreign country, the State Department has like a liaison whose job it is to connect with your family and connect with local police and like keep your family like apprised of everything that's going on. So this book, She Fell Away, is the first in a series. The heroine works for the State Department and is a diplomat, and that is her job, like family liaison. And there's a missing girl, and there's like a terrible billionaire, and there's, this kind of big question mark of like, what happened to this girl, and is there a killer, and there's a dead body that turns up, and this diplomat, and the pacing is so, I've read this one, it's so fast and so like voicey, and like it's just so fun. And that's coming out in March. But there's a new one, like this is it's going to be Lenore's new kind of detective series.
Fun.
And so like that's on my list.
Yeah.
Diana Quincy is now writing under the name Diana Awad, and she is also writing that She Fell Away comes out in March.
Yeah.
Diana is writing under Diana Awad. Her book is called As Far As She Knew. It's a Mindy Kaling pick. It comes out in April. And that's also another kind of like suspense novel. A wife and mother discovers that her dead husband has had like a secret life. Christina Lauren has a new book out coming in July, The Romance Revival. Kate Claiborne has a new book, The Paris Match.
Yeah, that's the one for me. I mean, I just want to like pause and say like Kate didn't have a book out in 2025. So, to have like a really big like Kate book coming out, I think it's early April, is super fun. So,
yes,
that's big time. Yeah.
And then like Rachel Griffiths, who was a debut author this past year of historicals, has her next historical out called Just for the Season. So like there are people who now I'm waiting for, right? Like when's their book coming out? I talked about Kristen Callahan has a new book out, which I'm reading right now, and that's out in February.
January, maybe.
January. So I think like these, and all these books will be in show notes, so you can go see everything that we're talking about. But I think there's that too, that sort of, and I know that this is not just because of how I'm connected to the people in this world, but like I know all of you are sort of like, when is the next fill in the blank?
Right. Well, and I think like that's the part, like keeping track of some of that.
Joanna has a book coming out in the fall.
Right.
Lisa Kleypas has a book coming out in the fall.
Right.
I mean, like, and we don't even have the information on those yet. So like, there's so much. You sort of have these moments of like, some cool stuff is coming.
Yeah. And that's a part, like I'm really looking forward to those books, right? So, it's just like, and I think that's why we are really committed to doing like the little roundups, right? We did it last week. It was like, like the preview episodes. It is a good time to be like, these are the books I intended to read, or these are the books that seemed interesting and fun to me, and then it's kind of like, okay, we'll actually follow through and then like read some of them. And so, for example, a bunch of them that were like time travel-y, like I downloaded and then I put into the time travel folder, like on my Kindle. And then, when I go to read for that episode or when I look for something. So it's just like thinking about some of these things, like the things I'm looking forward to, the things that are thematically interesting to me. So yeah, I mean, I do find, like I said, I just really, and then when it comes to like the actual physical books in my house, that can be a little trickier for me because I really feel like they kind of come in and I have stacks of books all over the place.
So wait, can I ask you, I feel like I should know this answer. Can I ask you, are you you don't read print by choice?
I mostly read in because of the portability factor. And I read in bed a lot, and I just feel like I want to like lay there and look at something without having to hold it. But I do still read in print. I do, right? I mean, it's not like, but I would say it's probably 90% 10% print. Right. So and honestly, sometimes if I start a book in print and I'm really liking it, I sometimes will be like, can I get this at a library as an ebook? And we'll read it that way. Mm-hmm. Because the other thing is, so here's the thing, even though I know you can like use bookshop.org and support local bookstores, the reason for almost every print book I own, I've bought at an indie bookstore. And so I'm like, okay, for example, there are 3 romance bookstores in the Chicagoland area, right? There's Love Sweet Arrow, which was first. There's one called The Last Chapter, which is in kind of the middle of the city. And there's one called the Pink Couch Store, which is adorable. And it is up in like the northern suburbs, which I am never up there, but my cousin lives up there and my mom was here and I took my mom to see my cousin. And I was kind of like, okay, everybody, we're going to have to take a small detour into this little bookstore because it's here and we're here. And it was really adorable. But I was like, okay, when I walk into the store, what I want to do is I want to like buy some books, right? And they were great. I was like, okay, we're planning for a time travel episode. What can you recommend to me? And then I bought a couple of books in there. But so I feel like every book I own in my house that I'm buying like now, I am buying because I was in 57th Street Books. I was in Pink Couch Bookstore. I was at an indie bookstore there, and I therefore am like buying something because I want that store to stay in business.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
So I do still read in print, but I would say a lot of my reading is in e.
Okay. Yeah. Because I prefer, if I'm reading a book for the podcast or for blurb, or basically if there's a book that you want me to look at, I need that in print.
Yeah.
And the reason why is to, citation earlier in this episode where it's like, I'm not organized, right? Like I have no digital organization practice at all. In fact, and that is across my whole life. Like I am one of those horrifying people. My brother always I used to like really enjoy freaking him out because my desktop on my laptop I'm one of those people who I don't just have all the icons like across the whole board, across the whole screen. I'm so disorganized on my desktop that I bet you didn't know this, they actually stack on top of each other if you end up with more than there's room for.
Horrifying.
So, I mean, yeah, because you could just search. There's a search functionality on your computer. You don't have to have folders. So I'm that kind of digital. I have no digital. Someday.
The laundry basket method. You're just searching.
I hope that someday Rebecca Romney's predecessor, or, the people who come after Rebecca Romney who inherit my laptop are going to have a great time. So... But my point is that, that is true. And a lot of people in publishing know that like if they want something from me,
you got to send a copy. Yeah.
They're going to have to send me a hard copy. So all of that is to say that there are a couple of more books that I'm very excited about this year. Molly Fader, did you know this? Molly Fader has a new book coming in May.
No. So this is Molly O'Keefe, everybody.
Molly O'Keefe.
Yeah. When she's writing as Molly Fader, these are like her women's fiction titles.
Yeah.
More or less,
this is like 3 generations of women in a propulsive novel of female resistance and rage, sweeping from contemporary Los Angeles to New York City in 1977.
Sarah's like, correct, I would like it.
So that's already on my bedside table. I'm very excited about that. And that is coming out in, I think, July, maybe May, but soon.
Yeah.
May. And then Anna Cowan has The Duke coming in April, and I'm really excited about this one. I still haven't read it, although they sent it to me like a year ago. And it is a sapphic historical Duke.
Oh,
and,
yeah, I saw this.
I mean, the cover of this book is really great. Like, I think it's clear that like this is St. Martin's is publishing it. It's a stunning cover, and I just think like they're trying really hard to like make this look like something big and different. And Anna writes a great historical, so I'm really excited for that one, and that's coming in April.
Yeah, I will say sometimes a stack of actual books will get out. And again, though, like, it's like I have to sit down with them and kind of like look through them and be like, okay, what is this? Am I going to engage with this? Right? Yeah.
Listen, I'll be honest. Sometimes I sit down with them. I read the first like 2 pages. I think this is the other reason. Like, I can say on a Saturday afternoon, just pull out all the books that came in the mail that week, and I can call half of them into the little free library that day. Like, not for me, right? But it's just easier to do it when I can like hold it in my hand.
Yeah. Yeah.
So my neighbors like it.
Sure. Why wouldn't they? Amazing. No, I think I probably mentioned this. I took like a bag full of romances to work, and I took a picture of it, and then I sent it to like all of the women I work with who are romance readers. And then I did like a little like sort of like, here's what each one of these is about. And like some of them I'd read and some of them I hadn't, and I was really clear. And like by the end of the day, they were all gone. And I was like, this is so satisfying, right? Like just like, you know, like share them with the world. And I think that's the other reason I do really like books in print, right? You're like, I loved it. Let me pass it on to somebody else.
Well, there's a legacy to them, right? Like you can pass them on. Like somebody, what is not for Sarah might be for Jen. It might be for someone else. Like, and I think also the other thing that I really like, I personally, part of the reason why I like them to be in print is because I definitely internalize like plot better when I've like held the book in my hand. And what that does for me is like, it makes it so that both this experience on the podcast where like, I might not I might not read the book, I might not finish the book, but like if somebody were to say to me online, like, hey, can you recommend a book that has, you know, a leprechaun in it? Yeah, in fact, I can because I held that Sarah Rosh book in my hand.
Yeah.
Which happened yesterday, everybody.
Yeah. No, that was
I also read that book. It was really fun.
Yeah. I was like, it was leprechauns and unicorns. I was like, spoiler alert, dragon bound.
I know. What are you up to over there, ma'am?
But I like it.
This week's episode of Fated Mates is sponsored by LUMI Gummies. Consistent, mellow, and super delicious, LUMI Gummies are specifically designed to make you feel good, not stoned. Whether you're looking for an end-of-day distressor, a midday mood boost, or help getting the best sleep ever, LUMI Gummies has a strain that's right for you.
So, Sarah, I was recently doing a little reheated rivalry where I was like, I'm just going to like sit here and have like a little bit of an hour at the cottage. And you know, it was great. I took a gummy. I was teed up the little HBO Max, saw what Illy and Shane were up to, and I just had like a nice time.
Perfect. You heard it here first, everyone. Heat your rivalries with LUMI Gummies. LUMI Gummies are available nationwide. You can go to lumigummies.com. That's LUMI gummies.com and use the code FATEDMATES for your 30% off your order. Again, that's LUMI Gummies, LUMI gummies.com, code FATEDMATES for 30% off your order. If your podcasting app supports it, you can click on the chapter title right now to be taken to get your gummies. Thanks to LUMI Gummies for sponsoring this week's episode. Discoverability is hard for all of us. And I think you and I spend a lot of time thinking of like taking seriously our job to be discoverability buddies to as many people as possible in romance.
What I am getting better at, so again, now this is like not going to necessarily happen to all of you, but like we get lots of emails from publicists who are kind of like, can I interest you in XYZ book? And I really try to take those emails very seriously. Like I answer them once a week, right? So like once a week, I just like look through them, and some of them I'm not, right? Like you get on like some lists that are just like, I don't know what this is. I'm not the intended target for this, but whatever, I'm on the list at St. Martin's or whatever. So some of those I just delete. Some of them, if I am interested in the book, like often there's like, we'll send you a copy, or there's like a NetGalley widget and I'll just download it on NetGalley and then like put it in my 2026 folders. And I'm trying to be better about that, because if you're sending me a print book, like one of the things I've realized is I do like debuts in print. But like a lot of the other books, I'm like, you know what? It's okay with me if this is like on my Kindle, especially if I am like more organized. But like you said, like often sometimes I'll like double dip. They're going to send me one and I'm going to download it. And that way, if I do like it, I can transition to like having it on my, my Kindle. So I do. It's just like really interesting to like sort of think about that. And so behind my desk, I have like it's like one of those little carts from the Container Store. Sarah can see it right behind me. And I emptied it out last week. And then what I'm doing is like when people send me books and I look at them and I'm like, yes, this is one I want to consider, it goes on that like cart. And so then it's like, and then like one of the stacks is just like this looks good. And then one of them is like this is a 2026 debut. So I'm kind of like keeping them separate. And so I think like that's the other thing is like really trying to think through like, okay, what is it? How am I saying like with intentionality, like this is a book I really want to keep and this is a book I want to read. And so I think like I said, I just feel like there's lots of ways to do that in a year. Like if you are a person who has a lot of physical books, I have on my bookshelves, I have one shelf that's just like a TBR shelf, right? This is a whole shelf full of books I have not read yet. And then if I am like, okay, what am I looking for, right? And the one upstairs is like not romance. The one down here is romance. So it's like, right, like sort of really thinking through. And then, you know what? Sometimes at the beginning of the next year, I look at that shelf and I think, okay, those books have been here for a year and you didn't read it.
Are you going to read it?
Am I going to? Right?
Yeah.
And so then I will sort of like do a big kind of.
Oh, but man, do you have that feeling of like abject failure when you're like, I'm not going to read that book? Because I'm always like, I have a big stack. I think you probably have.
I've seen the stacks. Yes.
Stack. I have this big stack like right outside my office, like that's just a pile of books that truly, ultimately, are going to end up in the Little Free Library.
Yeah.
But like, I just can't pull the
You're
trigger
not there
on them
yet. Yeah. Here's what I will say is sometimes if I can't do it right now this is like not this time of year, but in my neighborhood, there is a huge book sale. The Hyde Park book sale happens every fall. It's like in like the first weekend or 2 of October. It's like whatever.
Yeah.
And so then starting in like August, September, you can essentially start donating books. And so that is like a big time of year when I'm like clearing the decks, right? So maybe I'm not going to do it right now. But I might look at that and think like, okay, now this is the time for me to really like, right. But I feel like it's almost for me then that process is like the beginning of the end of the year. Yes. The end of my fiscal reading year.
I'm going to speak for the people who live with us for one moment, which I hate having to do. But I will say if you're out there and you are like us, like, a book lover, and maybe if you're like me and like a book, you have a slight hoarding problem with your books, especially if they're books that you kind of know you're never going to read. What I would say is if you live with somebody who also is a collector of things that they might never use, and you have ever in your life been like, it's time for you to clear out like half of this stuff, then, look to thyself.
Yes.
You never ever have to play this part of the podcast for those people, though. Like they never have to know that we had this conversation.
You just feel it in your heart. It's funny because the thing about like physical books, though, like I think a thing we're all feeling is that like it is good to like interact with physical things with your hands. It's good for your brain. It's just good in general. At the end of last year, there's the 12th edition of the Merriam-Webster Collegiate Dictionary.
Oh, look at that. That's brand spanking new.
It's like
mine is held together with like duct tape and paper clips, MacGyver style.
Sarah, it's the first new like version they published in like 15 or 20 years or something. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I'm going to order myself a new dictionary. And then I keep it at my desk, and there is something very satisfying about looking up a word. I did it this morning.
I bought myself so every summer we go to Rhode Island, and there is a Quaker meeting house that does like a fundraiser, like book sale. And it's a week-long book sale in July. And I've talked about it on the podcast before. And last year they had like a massive OED. I mean, obviously abridged, but like, the abridged version of the OED is like humongous anyway. And it was $5.
Yes.
And I was like, I need this. And Eric was like, you need this.
And you're like,
you need this in Rhode Island to be schlepped back to our small house in New York City. I was like, clearly I do. And it literally is just seated at the floor on the floor, like by my desk. And every once in a while I come in and my daughter is like, I'm going to look in this. And I'm like, great, learn about words.
Have a nice time.
And I can remember doing that as a kid. Like my mom also had a massive abridged OED. And like, I can remember like the weight of that book, like dragging it open.
Yeah. So I guess I will say I am. I'm not going to say I'm going to like read everything in paper, but after reading The God of the Woods last week in paper, although I did switch to E for part of it.
It's nice.
It was nice.
I'm like also, yeah, it's
great.
just nice.
Yeah.
It also, you guys, makes it impossible for you to switch over to social media, texting, email, news, all of it. Like paper is how you avoid it all.
Right. You can't stay focused. Yeah. My reading iPad only has reading apps on it. Like it has.
Oh, you have a reading iPad.
I have a reading iPad. It's
adorable.
Right. I mean, it doesn't have email. It doesn't have any social media. It doesn't have any other apps. Yeah. It literally is like it's my e-reader.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you have any books you want to recommend?
No. I'm like, no, I don't know. I guess I didn't really think, Kate's book I'm really excited about. I mean, I would say, like, the ones you mentioned for sure. The idea that there'll be a new Lisa Kleypas this year is very exciting to me. Oh, yeah.
Anything you've read that you suggest people buy in paper?
I will say I do love, like, at this time of year, kind of a big, like, coffee table style book, and I just ordered this book and it came yesterday, and I am really excited. I am gonna look at it. It like literally came yesterday and I just took it out of the box before we started. It is a big, huge like pop-up book about the alphabet and how letters became letters. It's called Alphabet in Motion, How Letters Got Their Shape. And it's really...
That's cool.
Yeah. So it's like basically like I'm really kind of fascinated. And so it says like this ABC pop-up book explains and demonstrates the technologies and philosophies that have shaped letter forms throughout the ages.
That's cool.
And I was like, right? And so sometimes I will say like... Books are books and like they're paper and I don't get real like, but like if a book is like doing something no other book can do, those are the books I really dig. Yeah. So yeah, I'm really excited about checking out this book.
That's cool.
Yeah. I do like a beautiful book. Those are the things that I fall right into the boop. Right. Like I have an illustrated version of James Joyce's Ulysses. Okay, sure. Weirdo, but fine, and I do think like those are books that I find now really appealing, right?
Yeah.
A book that celebrates books.
Well, Jen,
Happy New Year. Organize your reading life.
Yeah. I mean, if you have a system that
Yes.
seems like it's designed for people who are bad at systems, you're welcome to share it with me. But at this point, I'm just going to try and keep on with my paper planner system because it seems like the lowest hanging system fruit.
And that'll work for you. Yeah.
And then maybe that will help. I'll start referring to, I found in my planner that I read.
See, there you go.
Then we'll know if it's working. Everybody, I'm Sarah McLean. I'm here with my friend Jen Prokop. We are Fated Mates. You can find us every Wednesday wherever you get your podcasts or at fatedmates.net, where if you click on show notes, you'll see a list of all the books that we talked about this week in the podcast, and also on other episodes, all the books that we talked about then. Last week's episode was our preview episode for winter 2026, so make sure you check that one out if you're looking for new books to add to your pile. You can also find us online at Fated Mates Pod at Instagram and Threads, and you can find us on Blue Sky at Fated Mates. We are, I don't know,
We're doing it.
we're here. It's the new year, new reading list, and we're here all year long. Thanks for joining us. We're ever more grateful to have you. If you're interested in finding more romance readers who want to talk about their systems of how they read romance and recommend good books to you, you are welcome to join our Patreon at fatedmates.net/Patreon. The Patreon gets you access to one extra episode a month and our Discord, where 1,000 or so other listeners hang out 24/7 talking about romance. So thanks so much for joining us. We're very grateful for you. Take care of yourselves and each other.